we are designed to sit as lit, pleasure-filled temples to the holy, and for our lives to be expressions of that. And I read a Rumi quote lately, because what happens when I talk like this? You know, we teachers sometimes paint a picture of the end point. And then, and I participated in this too. It's like we hear that, we think we're supposed to be that, we don't feel like we are that, we can't see the way to that, and then we get hopeless. And I love this quote that Rumi, I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but he said something like, if all you can do is crawl, start crawling. And in the pit of the dark night that I experienced, dude, I was crawling. Everything in my life stopped working, and everything felt meaningless to a terrifying extent. I could not find a reason to be on the planet. Everything looked like ashes, and everything false hurt, and all I could find was the false. And in order to actually stay on the planet, because I had this little baby that came right around then, in order to stay on the planet, I had to do a kind of a find the truth or die sort of exploration. It sounds dramatic. It actually was. I was on the brink of going crazy with the way that all of the falseness of my conditioning was almost like they were like debts all coming due at once. I couldn't speak false. I couldn't hear false. I couldn't participate in false. And yet I couldn't find anywhere to stand, because the root of my very being was separation, which is a falseness. And so much had to come crashing down. And I found myself looking around the moment for what I could stand on. And it wasn't very long before I realized that I could not stand on thought. That when my attention went to thought, and thought was whipping around trying to figure out what the hell happened and what was wrong and how could I fix it, the suffering would just get to an unbearable point. And so, just like someone, if you've ever participated in a traditional sweat lodge, an indigenous sweat lodge, a particular hot sweat lodge, the heat in the lodge drives you down to the earth. It drives you down to find anything that's cool. And sometimes one is even known to stick one's nose by the flap where the covering meets the earth for just a small bit of coolness. And that is often what, and some of you may be experiencing this, what the vice grip of deconstruction can do. It somehow suddenly, your conditioned falseness just comes crashing in on itself. And the air by the gap in the sweat lodge I'm talking about, for me, was, what can I find in this moment that is not thought? What is here? And I started to use the anchor of my body as an anchor to the present, and as an anchor outside of the craziness in the mind, because the mind, it would have been, bad enough if the mind was just incessantly maniacal. But what would happen is, I'm sure a number of you have experienced, is that in those states of being out of control and the mind whipping, the body gets filled with terror. And I really discovered that taking my attention off of thought and burying it into the simple flow of was a place to anchor. And I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't have a grand plan. I wasn't like, here's my plan for embodiment. I was basically just trying to live and finding the the places where I could land and not go crazy. And what that initiated was essences return to flesh through meeting and being with a body that had been, and you know, I was an athlete. I danced. I did all kinds of expressive things, right? So, you know, on the scale of totally checked out to like somewhat embodied, you know, I was doing okay. But the Grim Reaper wants everything. And when love moves in and, you know, everything must go, and love wanted to move into every single pocket and just kick the false right on out. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have one of these like nice sort of lit awakenings with, you know, the body still like checked out. Like this thing came like a rotor-rooter for the whole system all at once. And even after the moment where presence pulled away from mind, and presence looked at mind and said, oh, you know, I don't know that I want to live from you anymore. Even after those moments of deep revelation and realization, embodiment continues, because embodiment is, in a way, bottomless. The extent to which light can bring up to consciousness unconscious ancient patterns, familial, ancestral, human, deeper and deeper and deeper, freeing and lighting and soothing and healing and hollowing out ancient held energies so that the flow of life, the flow of love can move in to our flesh, can resume. And of course, a big part of this, for those of you who carry trauma, is trauma resolution. We don't need to be diving into the layers of our pain and conditioning like kamikazes and overwhelming ourselves. For some of us, the part of the spiritual path we're making a study of is the humility part. Trauma is a study in humility. Talk about having to slow down for the creature of the body. And we have all kinds of, you know, we adulate the high states. We aren't so interested in humility. Humility doesn't get the press. And yet, humility is sort of the ground end of the whole picture of living here as our essence.